Every day, people buy into one of the most dangerous business models in America. On paper, it looks perfect, proven systems, done for you support, and a fast track to freedom. But when you look under the hood, it's something completely different. After coaching hundreds of service businesses over the last decade, I have seen how the franchise model has destroyed so many people's ambition, opportunities for success, and their opportunity to create real financial freedom, which is the very thing a franchise promises. Today, I want to show you the 6 reasons why buying into a franchise might be one of the worst things you can ever do. Look, before we get into this whole thing, I want to give you a couple disclaimers. Number 1, I know there are some good franchises out there. So I'm not saying this is blanket and this is every single franchise out there. I'm also not assuming any bad intentions for any people who are running franchises. I'm just going to be pointing out the reality of what is actually going on with a lot of franchises and why it is a horrible business opportunity for most people to pursue in most cases. This video is part rant because it upsets me how often people get completely screwed by the promise and then the under delivery from franchises. This is also part public service announcement. I think you should have all the information you need before you make life-changing financial commitments and investments into your future, and you should have all the information. And this is not the information that a franchise will ever give you, and it's my job to give it to you. Finally, I'm not going to name any specific names for a number of reasons, but the examples I'm going to give are from at least directly 5 different franchises just in the painting industry, and I know it's the case in many of the other industries as well, because we're going to focus on the fundamental principles of why a franchise is a bad investment for most people most of the time. Having said all that, let's dive in. So first we need to understand what a franchise is promising and why it's unrealistic. There's a few things that are really common as like the big promises from a franchise. One thing that I hear often is like, oh, you've got this national brand, like we're already reputable, like you have credibility, etc. But it's kind of BS because there is no national brand. There is a brand, right? There's a name and a logo, but no one in your market knows about that brand yet. And even if there was a brand, in most home services, there is no brand because you're never big enough to actually be a brand. Like it takes years of being in a market, hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising, tons of touch points with customers to even create a brand. So promising a national brand sounds good to someone who's buying into it, but all you're really buying is a name and a logo. So the brand you can create yourself is not that expensive, so there's not really much value in that promise. The next promise is proven systems. Now, they don't show you the systems until you have signed on the dotted line and wired them a ton of money. You don't know what the proven system is. It may or may not be good. So let me give you an example. This is a prominent franchise. I have a number of people that I coach who have that franchise because they didn't get the support from the franchise that they thought they would get. And so now they're getting the support they thought they were getting from the franchise from me for a tiny fraction of what they're paying the franchise, which really pisses me off because I'm helping these guys build their business because I'm helping people, but I'm driving tons of business for this franchise. They're literally making more money than I am by a lot from the effort I'm putting into helping their franchisees. It's outrageous. Their proven sales system is 1 page. Can you believe that? How is that even legal to call that a proven system? There's no one who is even coaching them in the organization on sales who has ever sold a paint job before. It's offensive. In my coaching program, I have hours and hours of sales training and dozens of pages of exact scripts that produce reliable results and have sold hundreds of millions of dollars in business. That is a proven system. You don't know what's behind the curtain until you pay. They often rely on the success of one location to prove that we have a proven model. Now, there's a flaw in that thinking, which is building one location is a business itself. Figuring out how to take one location and do the same thing in other locations is a separate business. The fact that I've had success one time doesn't mean I'm gonna have success in every market. That's a different business to figure out. And so oftentimes they rely on the success of one corporate model to prove that we can do it a bunch of other times. All right, next thing that they promise is look at the results of our current franchisees. What they will tell you is some figure of what the average revenue is doing per branch. But revenue doesn't matter. Profit matters. And they can't disclose profit and they won't disclose profit. For example, I have seen franchises say our average location does $1 million a year. But I know the economics of the business means that that location might be making $80,000 in profit per year. And that's not enough money when you've got piles of loans and debt that you're paying off for the original purchase of the franchise. Furthermore, it's very hard to build a big business because you have a limited territory. The answer to that is buy more territories, but now you just have to take out even more debt to buy those territories and there's no guarantee. And the bigger the business gets, the more you pay in royalties. So the more successful you are, the steeper the price you paid. A lot of these franchises don't provide incredible proven systems because that's super hard to do. And a lot of them were maybe well-meaning and they did have one successful business and they really do care, but they're just not good at that other business yet. And I know a number of franchises that have actually gone completely out of business. And so the only stage of the business that it makes any sense at all is in the very, very early stages when you know nothing and you're super scared. Which brings me to the second point, which is a franchise model can be kind of predatory. Franchises sell two things. We already talked about the first thing, they're selling the dream, but then the other thing that they're selling is they're selling safety and they're selling risk aversion. So they're basically saying, hey, there's a lot to be worried about. You could fail because you work with us, we've got you, which makes it borderline predatory. And fundamentally, people are looking for two things. Like one is they're looking for a shortcut. And this is not a dig at anybody who bought a franchise. That's what the franchise sold you. Is they're like, this is a shortcut. We have the model, we got everything. You basically pay, you plug in the system, poof, you're gonna be rich. And it doesn't obviously work that way. But it's sold that way to some extent. Some franchises don't underdeliver, but the exception proves the rule. Most underdeliver, and you never know until it's too late and you've already wired all the money, you've taken out the loans, and you're locked in. The other thing it gets sold to is people who are scared or nervous. A lot of people really want to create an income, they want to build a business, they want to make a lot of money. So why don't they just go do it? Because they're scared, because they're nervous, because they don't want to fail. And the franchise gives the illusion of safety. And I call it the illusion of safety because they're just giving you some systems. Like they're not gonna do it for you. Like, and those systems that you get are available. I'll use me as the example, but like I literally give people all of the systems to execute and all the support and all the coaching and the events and the community and everything that a franchise gives for a tiny, tiny fraction of what a franchise offers. And I can tell you from experience and from talking to lots of people who've gone through this, the model that they're selling is usually not that good. It's not even like they're bad intent. I'm not assuming intent. It's just business is hard. And just like there's bad painting companies out there and bad landscaping companies, there's bad franchises out there. It's very rare that you have an exceptional, extraordinary company. People overvalue what a franchise is offering when they're afraid and they don't know. Next up, they often promise simplicity, support, fast results, and most of the times they underdeliver on that. So I've already made this point, but I want to elaborate on it. So you don't get to see what's behind the curtain until you paid, until you're locked in. And once you see what's behind the curtain, if you're underwhelmed, too bad, you paid and you're locked in. What's really tricky about this whole situation is there's a lot of legal red tape when you're considering a franchise from like the FTC. And so there's just certain things that a franchise can't disclose. Like they're not allowed to disclose certain information. They can't talk about their biggest case studies. They can't talk about certain things. And oftentimes they almost hide behind that where it's like, look, we can't talk about that. What we can say is this is our average. This is average revenue. This is this. You kind of don't get to see what's behind the curtain. You can't even ask a lot of specific questions. And so the level of due diligence you can actually do is kind of limited. At the end of the day, like it's kind of like a big bet saying like, are your proven systems actually any good? You gotta understand that the person selling the franchise is not living the dream that they're selling. The franchise model can be an incredibly lucrative model because as the franchisor, you are selling a pretty big ticket to sell the territory itself. And as I said earlier, the system might be very basic. The brand may have cost $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to create. The support team might be pretty minimal. And then I can sell these territories for a huge amount. And some franchises will sell multiple territories to single people. On top of that, now I've got royalties. And I've already pre-set up like what I'm gonna do for them and not do for them. So that's kind of fixed. And they have to achieve certain revenue numbers just to make ends meet. And so it puts like all this pressure on the franchisee who bought the business to drive the revenue up. And as that person drives revenue up, I just get paid. Man, it just sucks for me to see this happen to so many good people who totally could have done this on their own and instead are just stuck and now are in a brutal trap. Next problem with the franchise is you have a built-in ceiling. So first you gotta understand how franchises began. We could look at McDonald's as like the first really successful, publicized example of what a franchise model can look like. But McDonald's is a location specific business. Here's my McDonald's. It's really only gonna be like this 10-mile radius that anyone's gonna come here. And so I can sell, this other location here and this other one 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 here. The problem though is you take that model that was really based on a location-based business and you apply it to a home service business, and there's some issues that come up. The first thing is, with the home service business, we go to customers, they don't come to us, and so I can easily go down the road. I can easily expand my territory and my reach, and it's one of the easiest ways for me to grow and scale my business is literally expand the territory. I'm not allowed to do that when I buy a franchise because I buy a limited territory, and the territory is very limited. Why? Because if I'm the franchisor and I'm selling territories and I want to sell the Denver market, if I sell that whole opportunity to one person and that person doesn't succeed, I can't sell it to anybody else. And where I could have gotten 20 million a year in revenue, now I'm only getting 2 million a year in revenue and I leave 18 million on the table, which to me at a 10% royalty is like millions of dollars every year. So the way that I can hedge myself and make sure I don't have one ineffective franchise owner kill a territory is I break that Denver territory up into 8 territories. But now I've got this $20 million market where it'd be a huge opportunity for one person, and now I've actually turned it into 8 little opportunities. But I still charge a huge premium on every one of those little territories. So the only way I can really increase my opportunity and my market size is buying more territories, which is a ton more money, which franchises like. You're fundamentally buying a limited ceiling and a limited upside, and it's hard enough to build and scale a business. It's even harder when you can only do it in these 7 zip codes or 5 zip codes that you can operate in. And I think that is completely counter to the whole theme of entrepreneurship. All right, so this is kind of a crazy thing that happens with franchises. I'm noticing it happening right now because I'm coaching a couple dozen people who bought franchises, and now I'm coaching them because their franchise isn't delivering for them and they have invested a ton of money, they need to make this work, and they're not getting the help they need from their franchise. Outrageous. And I'm like, oh my God, like people need to know about this. Like people need to know what is happening. But nobody who is in the franchise right now wants to talk bad about their franchise for 2 reasons. Number 1, you don't want to look bad in the market and to your customers. But number 2, you don't want to piss off your franchise because you are kind of counting on them and relying on them. Well, you don't want bad blood from the people that you're like in bed with. So if you're in a franchise and you want to sell that location to someone, you have to sign legal documents promising to not talk bad about the franchise. They're protected. They're protected. If they don't deliver while you're a part of it, you're not gonna say anything bad. If they don't deliver after, you can't say anything bad. Like they literally have like this legal defense. Now again, not all of them. This is just, I know 5 that operate this way at least. Finally, you don't need a permission slip to build a business. Like you can do it. And I want to tell you how. You don't need to buy a franchise to build a great business. There are so many ways for you to start a business, to get into business and get the kind of resources, support, coaching, community, accountability that you need without paying such a steep amount of money. You could take all that money you would have paid to a franchise and you can invest it directly into yourself. You can own your brand, you can own your business, you can own your territory, you can expand as big as you want, and you don't give up half of your profit when you're at 20% net. Because if you're making 15% net and giving 10% away, like you are screwed. You have so much potential. You absolutely can do this. Don't let your fear and uncertainty talk you in to making a commitment that is super hard to get out of. I've got a bunch of different videos on my channel that you can check out. One video I'll just point you to is how I would start a $1 million painting company in the first year. And you can see those principles as how you could start any home service business on your own. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you don't buy a franchise.